The sky over the Pacific Ocean blazed with the glow of sunset, golden-orange rays dancing across the mirror-smooth sea. Not a cloud, not a breeze, not a single hint foretold the extraordinary and bizarre event about to unfold. The U.S. Coast Guard patrol vessel, Pacific Dawn, glided gently over the waves, carrying the calm routine of its environmental monitoring mission off the California coast. But in that serene moment, amid the ocean's stillness, a frantic voice crackled through the radio, shattering the peaceful air. "Captain, unidentified object off the starboard side." Lieutenant Jack Riley's voice trembled with shock, his eyes glued to his binoculars. A floating object, at first glance like a dark log, suddenly moved, defying the natural flow of the current. As the sunset's light hit it, sharp claws and drenched, glossy black fur shimmered into view. On the deck, not a single crew member spoke. A heavy silence fell, broken only by the soft lapping of waves against the hull. In the vast expanse of the ocean, hundreds of miles from land, the Pacific Dawn was used to straightforward tasks: monitoring pollution, aiding distressed vessels, or rescuing entangled marine life. But today was different. Captain Emily Harper, a 42-year-old woman with neatly tied brown hair and a razor-sharp gaze, was a legend in the Coast Guard. With over 2 decades of experience, she'd faced storms, saved lives from sinking ships, and even thwarted smugglers. But nothing could have prepared her for this moment. Emily strode to the railing, her heavy boots clanging on the steel deck. She squinted, trying to make out the strange object amid the glittering waves. "Give me details, Riley," she ordered, her voice low but sharp as a blade. Jack, a tall, sun-weathered man, hadn't lowered his binoculars. "It's moving, Captain. Not debris, not a marine animal. It's swimming against the current." The warm, almost sleepy atmosphere on deck turned taut as a wire. The crew, greenhorn sailors and seasoned technicians alike, gathered, murmuring among themselves. Emily raised a hand for silence, her eyes fixed on the water. Then, like a scene from a surreal film, the dark shape surged upward, powerful and alive. Water sprayed, revealing a muscular body, razor-sharp claws, and waterlogged fur gleaming in the sunset. A low, thunderous roar ripped through the silence. "Good God," Dr. Sarah Bennett, the ship's marine biologist, whispered, her face pale as wax. She stood by the railing, her trembling hands clutching her notebook. "That's a Jaguar!" A deathly silence enveloped the bridge. No one could believe their eyes. A jaguar, a terrestrial predator, was swimming in the middle of the Pacific, with no land for hundreds of miles. This wasn't just unusual, it was impossible. Emily turned to Sarah, her steely gaze betraying a flicker of astonishment. "Explain this, Doctor. How is a jaguar out here?" Sarah, a woman in her 30s with blonde hair tied high and a voice that stayed calm even in crises, shook her head. I don't know. Maybe it escaped from a wildlife smuggling ship, or was abandoned. But whatever it is, it doesn't belong here." She paused, watching the jaguar swim in circles, panting, its eyes glazed. "And it's exhausted. If we don't act now, it'll drown." Emily clenched her fists, battling the storm of emotions inside her. As a captain, she'd learned to stay calm in any situation. But this time, a vague fear mingled with a heavy sense of duty. "Wherever it came from, it's here, and it needs us," she said, her voice firm. "All hands to stations. Prepare for an emergency operation. We're saving this animal." Jack, still stunned, muttered, "Save a jaguar? In the middle of the ocean? This is the craziest thing I've ever heard." But he quickly dashed to the comms room, sending an urgent signal to the Coast Guard base in San Diego. The bad news: the nearest rescue team was over 3 hours away. "We're on our own, Captain," Jack reported, his voice tight with worry. Emily nodded, her eyes locked on the Jaguar struggling in the waves. Its soaked fur clung to its body, revealing rippling muscles but also a fragile vulnerability. Its roars had weakened, sounding like desperate pleas. "Then we don't wait," she ordered. "We act with what we've got." She turned to Sarah, who was watching the Jaguar through binoculars, her hands gripping so tightly her knuckles were white. "Doctor, any feasible ideas? I don't want miracles." Sarah took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. "It won't let humans near it easily, but it's too weak to fight back. If we can create a floating structure, a makeshift raft from life preservers, we can keep it afloat until help arrives." Emily considered it for a split second. The idea was insane, but they had no other choice. "All right, that's our plan. All hands, get to work." The deck transformed into an emergency workshop. Life preservers were unpacked. Ropes were coiled into large loops, and floodlights were switched on as the sunset faded, giving way to thick darkness. 2 inflatable dinghies were launched, carrying teams of sailors and technicians, each with a specific task. Sarah insisted on joining one of the dinghies. With experience rescuing whales and seals, she was the only one on board who knew how to approach a wild animal in distress. As the dinghy neared, the Jaguar began to thrash, its survival instincts kicking in. Water sprayed around its body, not from aggression, but from sheer panic. The dinghy rocked, and for a moment, the crew hesitated, their eyes flickering between fear and determination. "It's almost out of strength," Sarah shouted, her voice breaking over the waves. "We have to keep its head above water now." From the other dinghy, Sergeant Miguel Torres, a burly man with a booming voice, suggested, "If we loop a rope around its back legs, we can tow it toward the Pacific Dawn, but we've got to go slow." Emily from the bridge responded via radio, "Try it, but do not injure it. Priority is keeping it alive." Sailors in life vests, armed with flotation poles, jumped into the water. The challenge was daunting. A nearly 400-pound wild, panicked animal surrounded by humans trying to save it, unsure if it would lash out or collapse. The icy seawater seeped through their vests, but no one faltered. Sarah, on the dinghy, edged closer from the front, gently offering a flotation device. "It's okay. You're going to be fine," she whispered, her voice soft as if soothing a child. She knew the Jaguar couldn't understand, but the words calmed her own racing heart, keeping her from breaking at the heartbreaking sight. The Jaguar froze. A faint roar escaped its throat, like a final breath of life. Then, as if surrendering, it stopped struggling. From the deck, Emily gripped the railing, her voice urgent over the radio. "Secure the ropes, slowly. Don't let it sink." The sailors, with the precision of those who'd faced death before, tied ropes around the Jaguar's hind legs. It was nearly unconscious, its body kept afloat by the crew's skill and courage. Every move was calculated. A single mistake could unravel everything. "Pull gently," Emily ordered, the radio pressed to her lips. "No sudden tugs. We don't know how much it can take." The makeshift raft of floats and ropes trembled with each small wave, a delicate dance between life and death. Finally, the crew positioned the Jaguar on its side, its head propped above the water by a life vest hastily adjusted by Sarah. "Its breathing's uneven, but it's alive," Sarah reported, her eyes fixed on the animal's glazed stare. She could see life fading, like a flickering flame in the wind. It's hypothermic. We need to hurry. Emily gritted her teeth, scanning the pitch-black horizon. How long until the rescue team? Miguel, from the deck, replied, Over an hour, Captain. The current's pushing us offshore. It was a race against time and nature. The crew worked in shifts, diving into the water to adjust floats, tighten ropes, and monitor the Jaguar's breathing. Some used thermal blankets tied to poles to shield it from the ocean's biting wind. The entire ship poured its heart into the effort, ignoring time, rules, and the exhaustion gnawing at their bodies. With each passing minute, the Jaguar's body sank slightly, despite the floats. But no one gave up. Sarah, on the dinghy, kept her hand on the Jaguar's wet fur, feeling its faint warmth. It hasn't given up, Emily, she whispered over the radio, her voice choked. But it's on the edge. Emily, on the deck, stared at the lone beam of the ship's floodlight cutting through the dark ocean. Her heart tightened, not just for the Jaguar, but for the crew fighting alongside her. It's not dying here, she told herself, her voice steadier than her words to the crew. Not on my watch. For the first time since the rescue began, Emily left the bridge, stepping onto the deck. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Report every 5 minutes, she ordered, her eyes sweeping across the tireless crew. If we have to, we'll row it to shore, but it's not sinking. Her voice rang like a vow, igniting determination in every heart. The Jaguar's next roar was weak, drawn out, laced with pain but brimming with life. Sarah tightened her grip on its fur, tears silently mixing with the salty seawater. Hang on, big guy, she whispered. Help's almost here. In the darkness, with no sign of the rescue team, they clung to one thing: hope. Then, like a miracle, the radio sprang to life, cutting through the suffocating tension. Pacific Dawn, this is Eagle 01, confirming your position, approaching from the east. Emily gripped the mic, her heart pounding. Eagle 01, this is Captain Harper. The animal's stabilized but critical. We need immediate evacuation. Confirm payload capacity. Confirmed. Heavy transport with a veterinary team is preparing to land. The response was like a cool breeze, prompting quiet sighs of relief across the crew. From the deck to the dinghies, from the floodlights to the ropes, sailors exchanged tearful glances, sweat and seawater glinting on their faces. They'd held on, and now real help was here. 2 helicopters appeared over the waves, their rotors roaring like thunder through the night sky. Their lights swept the ocean, casting an ethereal glow around the motionless but still living Jaguar. Prepare the harness, Emily ordered, her voice calm but commanding. Signal the divers. This part needs absolute precision. The harness was delivered by a support dinghy. 3 divers, with courage beyond their training, surrounded the Jaguar, carefully threading the harness under its body. They moved like tightrope walkers, each motion gentle yet firm, as if handling a priceless life. Sarah stayed close, her hand never leaving the Jaguar's fur. It's barely moving, but it's breathing, she reported, her voice thick. She could feel its faint heartbeat under her fingers, fragile but stubborn. Finally, the signal was given. The cable tightened, the rotors roared louder, and the Jaguar was slowly lifted. Its legs dangled, water dripping like the ocean's tears. Even suspended between sea and sky, the Jaguar radiated majesty, as if it knew it was being saved. The Pacific Dawn crew watched in silence, their hearts beating in sync with the miraculous moment. Some removed their caps, Others closed their eyes, letting silent tears fall. As the Jaguar was loaded into the helicopter and the door slid shut, the radio delivered the final message. Target aboard, stabilized, en route to the nearest coastal base. Emily exhaled, feeling an invisible weight lift from her chest for the first time since the ordeal began. "Outstanding work, everyone," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "This wasn't just a patrol. This is something we'll carry forever." On the deck, Sarah sank to her knees, exhausted, her hands still coated in seawater and jaguar fur. She looked up, watching the helicopter's lights fade into the horizon. With it went the weight of that night, a mission that was more than a patrol and would forever be an indelible memory in every sailor's soul. On the California coast, the helicopter landed on a black sand beach, like a sacred ritual. The rescue team stood ready with thermal blankets, medical equipment, and everything needed to help. As the rotors stilled, the harness was lowered, and the Jaguar's massive body was gently placed on the ground. Everyone held their breath, the air frozen. Then, with a slow, almost ceremonial effort, the Jaguar raised its head. Its eyes scanned the horizon, as if confirming it had survived. A hoarse, weak roar, yet full of life, echoed across the quiet bay. In that moment, one sailor quietly wiped a tear, their eyes gleaming under the lights. Another knelt on the sand, smiling, hands trembling with emotion. Sarah placed a hand on her chest, feeling her heartbeat sink with the Jaguar's breaths. Emily, standing beside her, said simply, her voice low but certain, "It's back." The veterinarians approached, moving with the care of those who understood the value of the life before them. The Pacific Dawn crew stood at a distance, still unable to believe what they'd accomplished. No one was trained to save a predator at sea, but they'd done it. They'd saved a creature that, by all logic, shouldn't have been there. The Jaguar was transferred to a temporary recovery center, a secure quarantine area hastily set up by conservationists. It received intensive care, thermal blankets, medication, and constant monitoring. An investigation into its origins ramped up. Theories abounded. Perhaps it escaped from a wildlife smuggling ship or was abandoned when an illegal operation was uncovered. Some rumors mentioned an unregistered private yacht carrying exotic animals for wealthy collectors. But ultimately, the answer mattered less than the act itself. A chance to do what was right, despite all odds. The next morning, the Pacific Dawn docked near the coastal base where the Jaguar had been taken overnight. It rested in a makeshift quarantine area, sheltered by tarps and discreet fencing. From a distance, Emily and Sarah saw it resting in the shade, its body still damp but its breathing steadier. The Jaguar paid them no mind, its gaze drifting to the horizon, as if no bond had formed between it and the humans who saved it. That was a good sign. "It'll recover," Sarah said, arms crossed, her voice a mix of pride and wistfulness. "But once it's strong, it needs to go to a sanctuary, as far from humans as possible." Emily nodded, her eyes on the Jaguar. "It belongs to its world. We just did our part." Questions lingered about the Jaguar's origins. Investigators found traces of an unregistered vessel, possibly tied to wildlife smuggling. Perhaps the Jaguar had escaped, or more cruelly, been thrown overboard when an illegal operation was exposed. But now, it was alive, and that was what mattered. Before departing, the Pacific Dawn crew stood silently, watching the Jaguar under the tarp, no longer a symbol of fragility, but of strength and survival. They stood shoulder to shoulder, saying nothing, yet bound by an invisible thread, a shared memory, a shared triumph. In that moment, they weren't just a crew. They were a family, forged by challenge and united by compassion. As the Pacific Dawn weighed anchor, leaving the dock to resume its routine missions, none of its crew were the same people they'd been the day before. They'd changed, not because of what they faced, but because of what they chose to do when confronted with the impossible. The Jaguar, though it would never know their sacrifice, left a permanent mark on each of their hearts. The story of the Jaguar lost in the Pacific is a testament to the power of compassion, unity, and courage. Even when faced with impossible challenges, each of us can make a difference by acting with heart and resolve. Always believe that, even in the harshest circumstances, hope and humanity can light the way to save a life, whether it's a wild animal or one of our own. The small actions we take today can change the world, one life at a time.